Okay, welcome to the US of A. Nice to see you all again. Welcome. Thank you very much for your time. I said earlier that I've allowed an hour and a half for this. We may not need that, or we'll skip through if we can get it done in any shorter time. We may well have one or two other people join us shortly. I'm not sure we all know each other. That's the first thing to say. So I think we'll just have to do a quick round of introductions, if that's all right. Sam, I'll begin with you.
Hi, I'm Sam Mason. I work for MTM Youth Services. We're a youth work organisation facilitating various youth projects, including South Norfolk Youth Advisory Board.
Thank you. Kerry?
Hi everyone, I'm Kerry Rumsby. I'm from Norfolk's public health team. So in public health respect, we have an environmental piece of work that looks at things like housing, flooding, access to green spaces and the impacts on health. So that's kind of really why I'm here today.
Good, thank you. Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Salas. I work for Flagship Group, a housing association across the east of England. And so my role is ecology champion, which looks at how we manage our green space and how we can make it better for nature and people.
Thank you, Dan. Amy?
Hi everyone, I'm Amy. I work for the Momentum team at Voluntary Norfolk, and we support voluntary sector organisations who work with children and young people.
Thank you. Emma?
Hi, I'm Emma and I'm a community focus officer for Children's Services Early Help in the North District.
Thank you, Emma. Isabel?
Hi everyone, I'm the Senior Education Officer at the Norfolk Wildlife Trust, and that involves organising school visits to our reserves and other sites, putting together family events, attending events, and lots of project work to do with children and families in nature.
Thank you. Ed?
Hi, I'm Ed Stocker. I'm Norfolk County Council ex-ecologist, and I'm currently working for the Norfolk Coast Partnership as the Farming and Protected Landscapes Advisor. It's a grant scheme available to landowners in the areas of outstanding natural beauty, so the Norfolk Coast and the Norfolk Broads.
And you still have some money left, do you?
Yeah, still got some money left. Can't get rid of it. So
brilliant.
it's potentially open to community groups, parish councils, schools.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Paola, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Hi, I'm Paola. I work for Norfolk and Waveney Mind, and I'm involved in a couple of nature-based projects.
And you've been working with young people, I think, Paola, as well, which is why you're here particularly.
We do with one of these projects, which is called Sustain. It's a project to deal with help people to deal with climate anxiety, and we are in partnership with UEA. So we have some students that have been participating to that. Yeah.
Good, thank you very much. And Alice, welcome.
Hi, sorry I was a bit late there. Lovely to see you all. I'm Alice. I'm from a charity called Wild East, and we are dedicated to connecting children with nature across the East Anglia region. Ed, I might need to give you a shout a bit later, because actually there might be some interesting crossover that we could talk about. But yeah, we are in the middle of launching our schools program, which is going really well so far. So great to be here. Thanks.
I'm always amazed at how just the introductions seem to spark all sorts of possibilities between people, isn't it? Yeah. Good to see you. Just a couple of quickies. Emma, I met your boss the other day at the Health Watch event in Norwich, where she was speaking. Director of Children's Services.
Oh right. Oh well.
Yeah. And
far above me.
I mentioned that we'd been in touch, and gave her a leaflet and said, you know, a bit about what we're trying to do here. So you might want to follow that up internally, just to sort of, you know, build a bit of momentum and support, perhaps.
Okie doke. Yeah, I will do. Great.
Alice, I hope your family things are okay. Won't go into any detail, but
yeah, ticking along anyway. Yeah, dad is stable but still in hospital. So thanks for asking.
Good.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, I had a few apologies, including one literally 5 minutes before we started, from Claire from the NHS, who's had to go and actually help out in the acute hospital services today. So, you know, things are as, should we say, desperate as that in some respects, which is a great shame. But anyway, glad to see you all. Today is, I think, very much a follow-up to the meeting we had a couple of weeks ago, which I think some of you were at, but some weren't. And I see really today, I think, as a process of consolidating, if you like, the discussions that we had then with this obviously wider group of people. you hopefully had an email from me with a note of the key points I think that came out of that discussion. And I'd really like today to just run through that to see whether you've got any comments or thoughts or additions on that. But also, I guess, primarily to get the thing moving. Where do we go from here in terms of, you know, building this campaign, particularly focusing on, it's probably not appropriate to call it a launch in the sense that I was originally thinking of this, because you'll know from earlier discussions, I think in my mind, I had some sort of, you know, high profile event where we get media along and say, here we go, we're starting this wonderful campaign, come and join us. I think last time we just discussed that, and I think we moved away from that to something which is a bit more, should we say, blended with the different groups that we're trying to meet and to engage with, and to take a more sort of a stepped approach to this. So we can perhaps explore that a bit further later on. I hope that's okay. Is that okay with everybody? A quick thumbs up will do fine. If you've got any other, you know, urgent things you'd like to raise, flag them up, please, and we can do that as well. Good to see you all. The first thing was the vision and aims that we circulated around. And again, at the meeting we had a couple of weeks ago, those were, I think, generally agreed. Anyone, again, got any comments or thoughts on those, or are you happy to run with them? Again, thumbs up, thumbs down, raise your hand if you want to speak. Easy. Yeah, good. We're going to race through this meeting. Running through the different, I guess, strands of follow-up work that we started on the involvement and communication side. I mentioned that we'd had very positive feedback from yourself, Sam, in terms of the Youth Advisory Board input, and I mentioned before we started that I was hoping that Owen Hooper from Matthew Advice Project would be joining us today. His colleague Sarah joined us a couple of weeks ago, so there's that connection with the project that they're involved with. It's just sort of a youth action program or project. Anything you'd like to add, Sam, or indeed Amy, you're here now as well, you might want to add something on that sort of side of things and where we're at with the engaging young people and children side of things and comms. I'll come on to you in a minute, Alice, because I know you've had some further thoughts as well. Sam first, then perhaps Amy, if you've got anything to add.
Well, as I said, the YABs are all on board, if you like, so they're happy to use our young commissioners to, if you want to be using them as testing young people for any publicity or anything that goes out, we can run it past all the young commissioners. Most YABs have got something about nature in their plans. All our plans are done now for another 12 months. And so whether it's about connecting with nature, or whether it's from a well-being point of view or an environmental point of view, which is where the young activists are. They're there because they want to campaign around environmental issues. Yeah. So there's kind of the two bits with MAP, because they've got the other 6 YABs and they've got the Young Activist Project. So that's how they will be involved.
So that's Owen and Sarah, basically. Yeah. MAP, yeah, great, fine.
Yeah, and Sarah's also helping to cover the Norwich YAB at the minute because that worker's off sick. So Sarah's got her foot in 2 caps, so that she's a really useful link. So.
Great, that's good to hear. I was wondering whether there was any connection there. I assume.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great, excellent. Did you want to add anything, Amy?
Just that the Norfolk Youth Strategy is about to be formally launched in the next couple of weeks, and that's a youth strategy that's been co-developed by Children's Services and representatives from the voluntary sector as well. And there's a big chunk in there about climate anxiety and young people wanting to do more climate activism. As part of the developing the strategy, Paul Webb from Children's Services went out to a lot of different focus groups of young people, including the YABs, but also young carers, young people with disabilities and learning difficulties, and got their comments and their feedback on, you know, what it's like to be a young person in Norfolk. And green issues came out very, very strongly across every different sector of young people. So it's not just sort of I think there's a stereotype that it's kind of like the high achievers that care about the environment stuff, and that's not what came out. So so that's going to be really high in the strategy. And that just gives us potentially a little bit of leverage to be able to say, you know, this Nature First campaign is really important because young people have said that it is. So I'll send that round to everyone once that strategy is finalised as well.
That's really encouraging. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I don't know whether is it appropriate now, is it too early? I mean, in terms of the connections that we might make, any thoughts on that?
Don't know at the moment. To be honest, the last couple of weeks I've been so snowed under with a million things. I've not really given much thought to this, so that's why I wasn't at the last meeting. So apologies, but hopefully I can be a bit more involved now.
Yeah, that's fine. Great, thank you very much. Alice, did you want to come in? I shared a little bit of what you sent me over a couple of weeks ago, mainly to sort of stimulate, I guess, an understanding of what we mean by first nature, which is really what we're talking about here. And I guess, I mean, we'll come on to the launch process a bit later on, and the need to develop perhaps a clear brand and who we're going to reach and how we're going to reach them in that sort of way. But anything you want to contribute at this point?
Probably not a huge amount, obviously, because I've been a bit out of the loop as well. But I guess what occurred to me when I was pulling together the kind of skeleton framework of the brand development doc was that as a collective, it's really important for us to differentiate ourselves from just like, us as individuals. So what, we really need to emphasize in our comms to people that we're a collective, that are united, and this is the unique selling point. This is what we can do that nobody else can do or we can't do individually. Yeah. Because I think otherwise we're in danger of just replicating a lot of stuff that we're doing anyway for our various charities and organizations.
Yeah.
So really being succinct about what the collective nature of what we're doing, what the benefit is, I think is really important.
Yeah, great. And I guess that comes back to, we'll touch on it in a moment, it comes back to understanding what's already happening and thinking about, as we've started to do, where the gaps are, where the priorities should be. The gaps in terms of geography, the gaps in terms of different groups of young people, cultural, ethnic, whatever it might be. Something we're starting to sort of dig into a bit. Yeah.
And I think from our own organization's point of view, because we're relatively new as well, we're actually at that stage of I would say evolution as well, with regards to kind of laying out a mosaic of all the different things that we're doing and trying to join up the dots internally with our projects. So hopefully a wider version of that we can do together will really help dots connect, on a much greater scale, I guess.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Anyone, any questions or comments on that sort of general topic of involvement and communications, or are we okay to sort of move on from there? Kerry.
Hi, thanks, Nigel. I was just going to say that following on from the last meeting, I've started to pull together a kind of brief business case, I guess, to see what kind of support the council can give in terms of pulling the communications plan together. And I was at a meeting last week, at the end of last week, where you might already be aware of this, but I know we talked about potentially having all of the different services and different things available, perhaps on the ICS website, which Claire was taking forward. But when I was at a meeting last week, the activity finder that Active Norfolk had, which I know you're already familiar with, I was told that that's perhaps being expanded to take account of mapping all of the green spaces that are available and some of the kind of services already. So I feel like that's something I'm happy to go off and have a conversation and have a look into what that is, and just make sure that we're not duplicating anything, I guess, and determine the best way to kind of connect people with what there is locally.
That would be really useful, because I guess, again, that's a relationship that can work two ways, isn't it? If we're gathering information on what's already out there, then that could potentially be fed into the activity finder if it's appropriate. Yeah. Very helpful. Thank you. Anyone, anything else? Oh, here's Owen. Good. Just wait for him to join and lock in. Just to pick up what you said about resources on the communication side, Kerry, and you mentioned the ICS website, just to remind people that Claire from the ICS did suggest, I don't know if she was in a position to offer, but did suggest that the ICS website that's in development could provide a platform, if you like, for the campaign, or at least one platform which people could refer to, which would be helpful. And obviously, as you've just mentioned, the activity finder is another way of putting information, if you like, on the web about what's out there, and so on. When you talk about resources and so on, could you just expand a little bit on what you mean on that?
Yeah, of course. So at the previous meeting, kind of one of the actions that I'd written down was for me to look at what the communications team can do in-house at Norfolk County Council with regards to helping produce any media and campaigns facing resources. So I think, I'm sorry, was it Alice who produced a
Alice,
logo or something? Yeah. So it was perhaps taking that work and seeing what else there is that we can do, because obviously for us, as public health, we're interested in all of the kind of health benefits that that people will achieve by accessing nature and green spaces, and so this really hits a lot of our outcomes as well. So it's just looking at how I can kind of communicate that, I guess, to our comms team, and look at how we can kind of access that resource to either develop up posters or develop up web-facing stuff, or really wherever you need the support, really. So that's something that I'm exploring at the moment, and I'll share with you, Nigel, the kind of business case and the thinking behind that, so that you can okay it before I submit it next week.
Well, great. I was to say also, obviously, you know, a bit further down the track, if you and Alice maybe can have discussions about what that means in specific terms, you know, that would be really, really helpful.
That would be great.
Yeah, great.
Because Alice, I don't want to duplicate anything that you've already.
No, but that sounds
started
absolutely,
to do.
that sounds great, because you know, from a resource point of view, that's something that we don't have for kind of creative execution of things. So I'm very happy to kind of pull together briefs that then I can pass on to you and your team, that then they can execute, basically. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, I'll share the document with you as well, and then that way we can make sure that there's nothing that's duplicating in there. That'd be good.
Perfect. Yeah. Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Alice.
Thanks.
That's brilliant. Thank you both. Kerry, thank you very much. Owen, welcome. Glad to see you.
Hi, yeah, sorry I'm late. My Wi-Fi has been playing up, so I've had to go on my phone. So
Okay,
yeah,
well,
not great.
we can see you and hear you loud and clear. We've done our introduction, so I won't go through everybody again. But there is I'm recording this, so if you want to look back at the first bit of the meeting you missed, you can see who people are and so on. And coincidentally, sorry, go on.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I was going to say, coincidentally, we've just been reflecting on the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago in relation to involving children and young people and the sort of associated communications side of things. Do you know Sam and Amy? Possibly.
I don't think I do.
No, well, Sam is with MTM. You may have heard of MTM. And Amy, I think, are you with MTM, but you're also with other things as well, is that right?
Yes, I'm here with my Momentum hat on, but I do some moonlighting for MTM just to confuse everyone. I show up with different hats on in different places.
Yeah, great.
I bumped into Nigel at Clink's Farm a couple of months ago, Sam, so he saw me with that hat on.
Yeah, they've been talking about the commitment of the youth advisory boards, which I think you're probably familiar with.
Yeah.
And they also mentioned that you know your project, the Youth Activist Programme in MAP.
Yeah.
Would you like to say a little bit about that before we go on, just as we're on?
Yeah, sure.
Involvement. Yeah.
Yeah. So I work for the Young Activist Network, but again, I do know a bit about the youth advisory boards. They are slightly different in terms of what they can do. But yeah, so I work for the Young Activist Network, which is a fairly new project. It's kind of I've only been there about a year now. So we kind of work with young people between the ages of like 14 and 25, so like a 10-year gap, sort of the older side of secondary school and then young adults. And the kind of idea was to kind of provide a space for young people that are kind of interested in activism, but maybe perhaps lack the confidence or don't really know where to start. So I kind of start is to kind of give them the kind of opportunity to build some skills in campaigning, in organising, you know, kind of giving them the tools to kind of build their own campaigns. And from that, so when we first started, we kind of weren't really sure what young people wanted to do at the start. Obviously, there's things that we were interested in, but we're like, well, they might not want to do that. So we kind of, the first 6 months, kind of juggled around with different sort of projects and dealing with different issues. But one thing that, again, isn't surprising, but kept coming up was the kind of climate change issue. So that's where the kind of environmental campaign group came out of. So I started that about 2 months ago. Then I had to take a month off work, so I had a month off leave, so I've kind of just come back. So yeah, so we've got a couple of people kind of interested in that, and we kind of try and do some regular like fortnightly meetings and stuff. But yeah, at the moment it's still very new. It's kind of like you guys, we're still kind of getting the ball rolling, so it's still, you know, in the early stages. But yeah, it's kind of good to connect with you guys, because I think there's definitely some overlap there with kind of getting young people involved in kind of, and it's not just because the thing was, it weren't just the kind of climate change activism that they wanted to do. There's also a lot of like kind of nature and conservation stuff that they also want to do, which obviously does come under the climate thing, but it's not necessarily, you know, joining a protest or something. It's actually what kind of tangible actions can they sort of do or get going in their kind of communities. So yeah, I look forward to kind of working with you guys and seeing what we can perhaps do in the future.
Great, that's really good, and yeah, let's develop the connections really, and we can avoid overlap, but also, you know, reinforce and promote what we're doing really, which is great. You mentioned about, you know, getting out there and doing stuff. I mean, I'll say something about that in a moment on the resources front, which was promising, and I mentioned it at the meeting a couple of weeks ago. Anyone, any questions for Owen while he's here? Or no? Good. Well, nice to see you, Owen. And your colleague Sarah joined us a couple of weeks ago, I think, and, you know, hopefully between you can develop those contacts.
I will just drop my email in the chat, so if anyone does want to email me, then they can. That's in there then. Great.
Thanks very much, Owen. Moving on then, I mean, to the sort of area of resources, which is something I was sort of following up on. I mentioned last time that the national body action funder, which some of you may have come across, used to be called SEMBL, and a collective of housing associations have a project called Backyard Nature. If you Google that, I think I may have sent the link round to their website, but basically involves providing funding, I think up to £500 to groups of young people who want to get out there and actually do something about nature, climate, biodiversity, whatever it might be. And I had a very, very positive discussion with Yvonne Ogden from Clarion Futures, which is the charitable bit of Clarion Housing Association, and Sophie Forge, I think the name, from Action Funder, about developing effectively a Norfolk version of that national project. And again, they were very interested, I think, in exploring that and I guess tailoring something to, you know, the specific circumstances and communities, etc., that we have across the county. And actually, Sophie talked about, you know, it'd be great to do, I think she used the phrase, a deep dive into Norfolk to actually see, you know, the different communities of, and different groups of young people that there are, and, you know, where they're at and what their needs are, etc. So that was very good. Since then, as part of that discussion, we talked about a possible application to the National Lottery's Climate Action Fund, which some of you may be familiar with. Something that I think has been running for a while, and there's now another tranche or phase of that that's gone live. Potentially large amounts of money, but for a limited number of projects. I think they're talking about 15 projects nationwide. It could be local, it could be transnational, and obviously that implies that there might well be some competition for anything that we wanted to go forward with. But Sophie and Yvonne were, I think, interested in pursuing that as a particular opportunity. And I'm pleased to say that following a meeting, or actually at a meeting around the Community Wilding Norfolk project, which some of you may be familiar with, which is all about supporting communities in taking action at a local level to improve biodiversity, amongst other things. It was agreed there that the Climate Action Fund should be something that we explore, possibly initially with a focus on what they call the development phase of that. So basically there would be money coming in to develop a program rather than, if you like, funding a main program. And I mentioned again the idea that within that we could have a strand that if you like, focuses particularly on children and young people, which could be backyard nature, but it equally could be other things, the sort of things that Owen was just talking about, for example. So early days, but there is a working group established for that, which is hopefully going to meet in the next couple of weeks. And we'll obviously hopefully tie those two strands together and see what we can develop in there that's got a particular focus on children and young people. Reference has already been made to Claire's offer of a potential slot on the ICS website, which could be useful. Kerry, you've also mentioned obviously helping with communications in terms of resources and so on. Is there anything else on the resources front that people want to pick up on at the moment? And when I say that, I'll say welcome to Katie. Nice to see you, Katie.
Hello.
Any comments on resources side of things? Kerry?
Sorry, Nigel. I was just
Right.
going to say I'm really happy if I'm not part of or been invited to that working group already. Some of my resource, if you want to help develop that bid, I'd be keen to be included in that.
Yeah,
And I do have time to be able to contribute to that kind of thing.
yeah. I can't remember whether are you on the contact list for that group?
I don't know. There's a few different ones, and I know that a couple of them, the reason I can't come is because I pick my kids up from school. So I think sometimes if they're in the afternoon, my attendance isn't that great, if I'm honest, midweek.
Sure,
But
sure.
I can always send someone else or pick up anything outside of the meetings.
Well, I'm very happy to share the details for the meeting. I think there's a doodle poll for a potential date for that, which I'll share with you, and you'll be very welcome to join us. Yeah,
that would be great. Thank you.
good. Anything else on the resources front, anyone? No, okay. Moving on then, and Katie joins us just at the right moment because we're going to talk about what's already out there and what the gaps are and so on, the work that's been done on that. Very briefly, I know, and Katie, I'll let you comment obviously in a minute, you had some initial discussions and started, if you like, to pull information together. And following the last meeting, I agreed to circulate, which I did, a sort of pro forma that would hopefully help people to capture, you organisations that are already out there doing stuff in terms of nature connection for children and youngsters, just actually outlining what that is and maybe any ambitions you've got for the future. We've had a few of those in, which I think are very interesting, and they seem to be providing, I think, some very useful information. But I would say, if you look back at the email I sent round, the pro forma was attached. If it obviously applies to your organisation, please fill it in and send it to me in the first instance. But equally, if you're aware of other organisations out there that are providing nature connection opportunities, then please, pass it on to them and ask them to send it to me as well. Katie, do you want to come in at that point and give your reflections on where we're at with that and so on? You're on mute, Katie.
Sorry, Monday morning feeling. So I said yes. I've received that. I've sent that out to a couple of different groups actually. Just waiting to sort of see what I get back and be able to send it on. I feel that we need to. I suppose I feel a bit lost in. We had that good start, and we need to maybe gather a bit more momentum of whether we had a date in mind, not a next week date, or like what date have we got in the diary where we need to do something with it. And I think that will help us, I suppose, focus.
Yeah, I mean,
because that's what I struggle with. Don't know if
Sure.
all the urgent tasks get put to the front, and anything that doesn't have a specific date gets put on the back burner.
Yeah, I guess my own view, and I obviously appreciate others' thoughts. We'll come on to talk about the idea of how we launch this campaign, and I think I said at the beginning it's more of a staged thing focused on different audiences than one big event that says this is it, we're here, we're going, sort of thing. And I guess I would take the view that gathering that information and perhaps more importantly getting those organizations involved and looking at what they already do but might also do in the future is going to be a series of months. It's not going to happen immediately. I think it's something that's going to build over a period of time. And we'll build that engagement, and we'll build the momentum, if you like, to the campaign with that. But it does beg the question, which, you know, interesting you say, you know, what do we do with it? What is the stage after that? Or, you know, what do we do with that information? And I guess for me, it's that sort of, I guess, analysis stage, really, isn't it? It's actually saying, well, taking stock of what we found out and what messages does it say to us in terms of what we need to do that's extra or new or different. And that's something, I guess, you know, the group that you're sort of facilitating perhaps could do, or perhaps we need some help to do that in a sort of research analytical way. So we maybe need to, you know, get some people or person's time to actually do that. You know, we talked about resources and support, etc., and that obviously begs that question. I don't know if you want to come back on that, Casey, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that as for what we're going to do with that. In terms of sort of shorter term, should we put together a bit of, I suppose, almost like a timeline of sort of what is our promotion strategy, if you like, for this, to make sure we gather as much organisations as possible. So, like, for example, I know I'm doing a webinar with myself and Julie to SCAS, which is a Society of Companion Animal Studies, which has a number of animal assisted intervention practitioners, but it will also have green care providers, because a lot of those go hand in hand when you're looking at care farming, for example. So I, you know, while I'm at that webinar, and the topic that we're talking about is collaborative working, to me it would be a natural thing to include in a webinar. If there is any of you out there that's Norfolk based and could apply, can you please fill in and get back? I won't be the only person within this group that's doing little bits and bobs like that. So to not miss those opportunities, it's almost like we don't have a set strategy for how we are disseminating this pro forma, and that might help.
I think we've got to use those opportunities. You're absolutely spot on with that, I think. And I suppose what I'm saying is that my thinking is that, you know, we're here, well, early October, towards the end of the year, we would have gathered, you know, a sufficient quantity of this to have a sort of a first stab at what is it telling us.
But do we say at the end of the year? I mean, so we've got, I mean, I suppose it's because we're across groups that aren't education based and groups that are education based. So those that are education based will be looking, okay, you've got a couple more weeks and then it's half term. Yeah. And then after half term, you're pretty much all planning Christmas and whatnot. And you know, it's,
yeah.
I would be more inclined to put it as by, you know, February half term, if you're education based, please complete this pro forma by that sort of time.
Yeah.
Because you might not get it done sooner. So if you work more on term times and the work goes there. But then if we're trying to get people that aren't just the educational type groups.
Yeah. No, I can see what you're saying. I think, yes, if you think it's going to help to set a deadline for people, then absolutely fine. I suppose what I was thinking was, well, that wouldn't be the end of it, because there will still
no, it'd be where we get the boat, almost just a tool to focus, so we know where to expect.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to that in a moment. A couple of people with hands up, but Owen, I think first. Owen.
I was just going to say, so a lot of, so I don't explicitly work with the YAB groups, but I obviously speak to the people that organise them, and Matt sort of organises all of them bar one. So I was going to say, like, if you want, because a lot of so the way the YABs work is each year they kind of set, I think it's like a couple of goals that they want to kind of look at and sort of explore for the year. Then they reset their targets. But I know a lot of them are focused on kind of the environment and climate change.
Owen, just to let you know, I've already done that. I've sent the pro forma to all the YAB workers in, Matt.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is, because I'm there quite a lot, I can, if I can actually go into their sessions perhaps and maybe talk about perhaps the work that you guys are doing and sort of maybe introduce it as a group, that, because the idea is that they generate their own sort of ideas and then they kind of build their own sort of campaigns. But, you know, that's not to say that they can't work with kind of outside groups, if that makes sense. So say if it is useful, I can always kind of, when I'm in the office, kind of either have like a face-to-face chat. Because sometimes, you know, I know you send people emails and you're like, oh, like, did you get my email? And like, oh no, sorry. But if there's a way that I can perhaps, as someone that works at MAP, kind of talk to those YAB leaders for you, I'm always happy to
I think
do that if that's easier.
the problem, because we facilitate the other YAB, Owen, and the issue is back to Alice's question of, but what does this bring? What is First Nature about? What's that different bit? And so when the mapping's done and the analysis is done, it'll highlight the gaps.
Yeah,
that's what this group then brings.
Yeah.
And I think that's the unique thing. Sorry, I'm talking over Ed now because I know you had your hand up. But, so it's about what we can go to young people, but what are we going to them with at the moment? And that's the bit that's missing.
Yeah, I guess it's early days, and I guess at this stage it's about that opportunity to take forward things that are important to them. You've already said that these, you know, the whole area of climate change, biodiversity, nature is important to young people, as expressed through the YABs. And I guess, you know, what we're saying is, and you've just made the point, by collective action, we can make a bigger impact than, you know, each of us going off and doing our own thing, basically. That's the essence of this, isn't it? Yeah. Ed, come to you. You had your hand up.
Thanks. That's okay. Yeah, it was a sort of technical point, really. Some wording on the pro forma, where it says nature connection provision for children and young people. I was wondering if that word provision might exclude some groups or opportunities, because, for example, the group I work for, Norfolk Coast Partnership, we're not exactly a provision for young people, but we can support community projects or young people's projects. I don't know if opportunity is a better word, which you've used higher up.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
It only occurred to me during the conversation, so I could have sent it before.
Yeah. I mean, I'll certainly have a look at it, and if people are happy, you know, with what you've said, I'm very happy to make the change if it makes it clearer and more on the spot.
Some groups might think they're not actually providing the service for young people.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
They might unwittingly be able to help.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. Thank you very much. Coming back to really the substance of this bit then, and Katie particularly then, are we really saying that we set some deadlines, albeit their initial deadlines, for responses on the pro forma? And I think you were suggesting February next year?
Yeah, I was thinking you're more likely to get some people that you know, they have, you know, enough admin time to be able to sort of get on with it and do it sooner. But then you have other people that, you know, okay, we're up against it right now for, you know, Christmas, and then it's half term and whatnot. That's all, you know, schools are thinking about so much at the moment, and what activities are going on there, that you might get those ones later on, but still want to take part in it, still want to learn more, rather than, oh no, I can't meet that, I'm not going to manage that, and forget about the email. And I totally, you know, like that idea as well. You know, any other face-to-face opportunity, if anyone knows any, or if anyone's doing any webinars or networking or things like that on more of a face-to-face level, it might be an easier way to get the message out, rather than like an email that comes into your inbox that isn't an urgent thing and will kind of just get left in the ether.
Yeah, we'll come on and talk about communications in the sense of how we start to roll this out in a minute, I think, because that's precisely the discussion I think we had last time, which is, you know, thinking about, you know, social media, face-to-face contact, events, a whole range of different possibilities, I think, of building that momentum. That seems to be what we're about, isn't it? Building allegiance, if you like, and then, you know, gradually developing different strands of activity that perhaps do plug gaps and so on. I just wonder about the deadline, whether would that be more of an internal thing for us?
Yeah, for us to have that, to know, so we can put together a bit of it's just ideas, more we're putting together a strategy of, okay, how are we going to do it? We've got this. Yeah, we've emailed it out to a few people. That's not going to get the best, you know, we could get more uptake on that if we add a bit more to that.
Yeah, and also I think, you know, let's recognise that we may need to contact people more than once in order to get a response. Kerry, I think you mentioned last time about, particularly thinking about schools, you have a bulletin that goes to schools, is that right?
Yes, well, it's not us personally, but in the past when I developed some COVID resources for schools, I'd worked with Norfolk County Council's education team, and they had I did kind of an assembly guidance and a head teacher's briefing and just a kind of Q&A sheet for parents, just to kind of translate some of the COVID guidance. And anyway, I sent that out via something called an MI sheet, which I was completely unfamiliar with, and I've only used the once, but I was told at the time that that's the best way to contact schools and to ensure that what you're producing goes directly to the head teachers. So there'll be a number of updates, and I believe that they're sent on a monthly basis, and they'll drop in and then form kind of part of future plans with the school, basically. So I can look at that and explore that as a possibility for this piece of work as it shapes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to look at those different channels, haven't we, really? And yeah, that sounds like a good one. And maybe it begs the question, well, what do we actually put in there? We need some narrative, don't we, about what this is all about, and you know, a request for people to complete a pro forma or whatever.
I was definitely warned off kind of sending any bits and bobs or anything uncoordinated to schools, because they're just absolutely inundated, and I was told they wouldn't read it even with something as kind of huge as the COVID guidance. So that definitely seems to be a potential way for us, once everything's kind of together, I think, to approach the people that we need to.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we need to think about schools, you know, as a sort of a separate area in that respect, and use the pro forma, certainly amongst ourselves, you know, to complete what we can on that, you know, that front. But equally, if we know organisations, then we can pull them in, and it's going to be, I think, a gradual process of gradually getting that information and that engagement together, isn't it? Emma, over to you. On mute.
Sorry, I'm mute. I was thinking regarding the getting into schools. I'm part of a team of community focus officers, and we do have regular surgeries with the schools. And I was thinking that might be, you know, something that we could possibly share with them on our monthly, termly surgeries, and in our community focus forums. Rather than going in, and now I've done mail shots even to my local schools, and that just is a time, as Kerry said, time wise. So that is a way of that we could potentially distribute information, definitely in North Norfolk, and possibly I could speak to the rest of my teams to be able to share the information with them at early help, and work with the partners and community groups. We work with the app as well, so
sounds fantastic opportunity. As we've been saying, you know, face-to-face contact is going to be so much more impactful, isn't it, than sending
because we could just go, well, have you thought about this? There you go. There's you get the details, and then you know, they're in front of you.
Maybe we're starting to get into that discussion now about where we go in the next, you know, few months. I'm wondering whether what would you need for that? Would you need some sort of briefing note for you and your colleagues?
Sort of maybe a briefing note and a leaflet, and then we can, you know, and then if they're interested, it's obviously schools are just completely rammed at the moment, but you know, thinking about mental health, which, you know, there is, you know, a certain amount of issues within our schools, that we can pitch it in at that level.
Sounds great idea. Maybe, you know, that's the first bit of, you know, the communications we'll talk about in a minute, but maybe that's the first priority to pull something together on that front. Going back to what we're saying about, you know, Alice and Kerry, and you know what you might do together on that front, perhaps. Yeah,
definitely.
Okay. So I think just to wrap things up on that, I think we've had a lot of discussion about schools and obviously the need to make contact effectively. perhaps we should move on now then to, thinking about that approach to the next few months and gradually building that commitment. I suggested at the last meeting, and I didn't get any disagreement. That's not to say people don't disagree with it, but in terms of the aims that we set out, the two priorities I thought were important were really what we've been talking about: engaging and involving children and young people, and obviously engaging and involving and getting information from those who are providing opportunities for Nature Connection already. And we can gradually work on, if you like, those wider aims a bit further down the track. Does that seem an appropriate focus to people, or do you have other thoughts? Katie, did you want? Yeah, you're on mute.
I've got us on me. I just said, yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, thank you. What's your take on it, Alice? Do you think that's appropriate? I mean, thinking about the comms side of things, which is obviously very important in that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that sounds absolutely bang on for me. Yeah.
Good.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
So, question of how do we do it, really? And in a sense, it's putting all of you on the spot and saying, what can you do to help build that momentum, build that engagement? We started to talk about schools and how we perhaps connect with them effectively. Owen's offered to talk, in groups that he's involved with. The YABs have been mentioned and so on. What are your thoughts on the specifics, I suppose, of what we do to build that momentum? There was a discussion, I think a suggestion at the last meeting about would an event or events that involved bringing organisations already providing opportunities and children and young people together be one way of, if you like, facilitating not only contact but discussion about, well, what do we need, what do we think is important in this? Do you think that's got a place in this?
I like the idea of showcasing what's already out there, because then people can actually, it's something tangible that people know what the campaign's about. This is part of it. This is what you can actually access now. Otherwise, yeah. I feel like we're going out there with no offer. It's you can get opinions all you like about campaigns, but what's the offer? What do young people get out of it? What do children actually do? So if we can showcase what's going on, then I think that's really positive. Thank you, Sam. Yeah.
I think again, it's just important sort of looking at the resources we've all got to put into it. There's a lot of other stuff going on, I know, within each organisation. So rather than looking at separate events, just I suppose having in mind that when people are doing any events or any coordinated activity on some level, to maybe see how you can make more of the opportunity, feed it back to the coalition, see if anyone else can come and join in with some, have a cup of tea even at someone else's event, or bring a flyer at someone else's event, just to start promoting that this is, look, we're kind of doing this in a small way, that this is what we're wanting to do more of. Look, I could, a member of our team go, quite often might go and take a craft activity, or like a willow weaving or something like that, actually something that's easily transportable, when we know there's other things going on, other events, and you kind of we do that within our little community. But if we did that within this community between each other, rather than creating separate events and everything that comes with that to organise that, right, just be mindful of, if anyone's doing anything, maybe stick a note on an email as if anyone wants to pop over with some leaflets or a cup of tea or an activity, please do join us on such and such a date at such and such a place. Yeah. That's just a thought, just trying to not create too much.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Isabel.
I completely agree with Katie about people being time poor. I think that's a real issue at the moment. On the other hand, going back to I think it was it Alice who's talking about branding? Yeah. Was that right? Because I think this is the thing where people might get confused about what this is. So I feel like if there was an event, and I know this isn't necessarily realistic, but if there was an event where we could showcase what we do, what our offer is, you know, with stands or whatever, where members of the coalition could attend with stands, and that we had this branding for the coalition. So you could link directly this event with this coalition, with this campaign. I feel like in people's minds, that might be like a clear way of communicating what this is. And then we could have at the beginning, like at the entrance, you know, what's the mission and vision and aims or whatever, so people know exactly what they're going into, rather than it be confused with these are organized, like, you know what I mean, like this is just another thing, rather than
it's not a fair in that sense. It's actually saying, yeah, these organizations are here, this is what they're doing, they're doing this not as part of this campaign, but in support of this campaign, if you like. That and it's a separate thing in itself. Like, they're all part of it, but they do other stuff apart from this. Do you know what I mean? But it's this is it. If you know what I mean. Sure. I don't know how I'm not sure I'm expressing myself very well, but anyway. Yeah. No, I think I take your point. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Kerry.
Hi, yeah, so just picking up what Isabel was saying actually about communicating what this actually is, would it be possible for you to invite some case studies perhaps from people, so that you can have some young people explaining what this was to them, what they did, how it changed their views or how it benefited them in another way? Because I think then it kind of tells their story a little bit. That might be a simple way. If you're already chasing up the pro formas at some stage, then perhaps you could invite those kind of things anyway. And organisations, I'm sure, would be keen to promote the work that they've done and some of the young people's voices. Yeah, I think you make a very good point. That those individual stories are often the most powerful way of getting across, you know, the benefits that we're trying to get across. I do know, because I asked this to be done for a separate reason, that some of you may know of the Green Light Trust. They've been doing a variety of things, mainly in Suffolk up to recently, but much more in Norfolk now as well. And they've produced a couple of case studies, very much of what you just said, Kerry, sort of individual stories, if you like, of individuals that have benefited and how important what they did was for them and so on. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that. Yeah. Any other thoughts, anyone?
So I've got to shoot off now.
Yeah, okay.
Nice meeting you guys, and I'm sure I'll see you soon. But yeah, just drop me an email if there's anything. Yeah, I'll do a follow-up email, Owen, and hopefully we'll set some dates for future meetings and things as well. Thanks for your attendance. All right, see you later. Cheers. Thanks. Sorry, Nigel, I've got another meeting as well now. Yeah, okay, thanks very much, Ed. Fly off, but likewise, I'll catch up on email. Well done. Thank you very much. Thanks. Good.
Sorry, I need to go as well, Nigel. It's 12 o'clock. Sorry. But yeah, if you send that email out, summarising it, and I'll sort of reply to all or something like that. Just sort of keep that conversation going. Okay. Thanks, Katie. Okay, take care. Bye. Contribution. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I guess, reflecting on what we've discussed so far, what I get is that, I suppose the unique selling point, if that's the right phrase, is, the collective approach that we're taking. The word coalition has been used as a way of describing that. Why are we doing it? Well, we're doing it because, between us, we all know the importance of connecting with nature for benefiting health. That seems to me the core of this. And, the reason we're doing that is because children and young people in particular have had and continue to have difficulties as a result of the pandemic. And that's certainly what prompted me to, suggest this campaign. That's, I guess, the core, I would suggest, of what we're, why we're doing what we're doing. And as we've reflected, as we've discussed, that is at least in part about taking stock of what's already happening, but also looking for opportunities to do more, particularly where there are geographical gaps or other gaps in provision or opportunities. So I'll come back to you, Alice, because this is primarily about communications, isn't it, at the moment? It's about communications to
engage those two priority groups, children and young people themselves and existing providers. Do you think, from what we've discussed so far, you've got enough information to take your thinking to the next stage, or?
Yes, but then I'd always caveat that by saying the further development you do, the more questions arise. So I think to be able to kind of have the ability to, you know, communicate with the rest of the team and send questions and maybe send things to the group just to get a sense of what people are thinking, just so it's not me putting my thoughts down on a page, you know.
Absolutely.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you've hopefully all got a, I'll send it around again, but you've all hopefully got a list of the contacts for the group. So it should be possible for you all to email everyone with anything that you want to share. I was thinking in terms of meetings, and I don't want to have meetings for meeting's sake, but we do need to have, I think, reasonably regular, if not frequent, meetings in order to keep momentum going. So I was going to suggest, and I don't know what your views are, but I was going to suggest that we perhaps schedule a monthly meeting, which I can send round as a suggested, date for each of the next few months. And hopefully with enough notice, we will get, more people being able to attend. Does that sound about right to people, or do you think it should be more frequent, less frequent, whatever?
Monthly sounds good to me. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
And just with regards to my chunk of work that I'll be looking at and my capacity, starting next week from Monday onwards, I'll be a lot freer. So planning to kind of dedicate some time to this then. So it'll probably be sometime that week that I'm emailing people if I do have questions.
Yeah. And as you said, I mean, that's absolutely right. I think, let's email each other in between meetings and, share ideas and get feedback and get that process of development going. I'm tempted to say I think that's probably it for today, unless there's other things that people have got. It's been a very useful discussion, I think. I will do a round robin email afterwards where I'll hopefully capture the main points. Obviously, we've recorded this as well. And I'll reflect a little bit more on, the suggestions that have come forward and perhaps make some suggestions as to where we go from here with things. And equally, please chip in with your own thoughts as the discussion carries on. Is there anything else anyone wants to raise today?
Is it worth, because we can be working on some case studies already, is it worth doing that for you?
Brilliant. Yeah, I think anything like that, I would certainly agree, and I think other people would as well, that's a really strong way of getting messages across, isn't it? So if you can find some individuals who are prepared to tell their story either on paper or in a meeting, that'd be fantastic, I think.
Great. And we could also write from a kind of partnership, because we don't do anything in silo, so we can show the importance of partnerships.
Absolutely.
As well as the young person's individual story. So yeah. Perhaps you can help with that as well with your work with us with Clinks. So
yeah, no, that would be fantastic. And likewise, the other opportunities we've started to explore. So Emma, your suggestion of using the monthly surgeries at schools, I think is a brilliant way forward as well. And again, Alice, you can reflect that, can't you, in how we take this forward, really, and ways of communicating with those different audiences, I guess. Great. Okay, well, this is nothing else. I'll schedule something for about a month's time, and in the meantime, obviously, we can communicate and take things forward. Thank you all very much for your time again. Hope you have a good week. Be in touch.
Thanks. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.